Jason Scheer, Wildcat Authority, where this covers Arizona, and joins us on 365 Sports. We've had Jason on quite a bit, and it's been a while. And who knows, over the next 2-3 weeks or so, if we might end up having almost like a roundtable of about 15 people we've discussed on the Pac-12, but also those involved in a realignment. Jason, has anything changed at all, in your opinion, where we are with the Pac-12?
Not really. I mean, the only real news, I guess, is San Diego State pretty much telling everyone that they plan to go to the Pac-12. I mean, maybe they didn't handle the process, but I don't think there's anything super new. I've heard some rumors, some whispers that there could be some sort of deal presented to the Pac-12 presidents in the next few weeks, which would line up with the timing of everything. And there's still not a lot of confidence from what I'm hearing that the deal will hit the number that everybody wants, but we'll see what happens when it's presented.
Jason, what have you kind of gathered? Just part of this that's fascinating to me is whatever does end up happening with the Pac, the expansion side, and what that would mean for a San Diego State and potentially an SMU, who in some conversations seem like they'd be a layup, and others, a question mark, like everything else kind of surrounding the conference right now. But just what's your thoughts, or what opinions have you heard on the potential of SMU as a Pac-12 school?
Yeah, from what I understand, San Diego State is a lock. I think that's pretty much a done deal. Whenever a deal is presented, accepted, all that, San Diego State will happen pretty quickly. SMU is a little bit mixed. From what I understand, there's presidents that are gung-ho and that fits the profile, and there's other ones that, are a little more skeptical. I know that SMU is telling people within their circles that they're confident they will get the Pac-12 invite. With San Diego State, they're pretty much telling people it's already, it's just a matter of time. SMU, I think, is a little bit further behind in that. It wouldn't surprise me at all if we see just San Diego State and it stops right there. But I know that SMU is pushing forward, and they've got big boosters and things like that. But, I think that when you look at it, if I were putting percentages on it, I'd be almost shocked if San Diego State didn't join the Pac-12, and I really wouldn't be surprised at all if the Pac-12 just kind of stopped with San Diego State.
Jason, when did this go off the rails, and why did this particular TV deal become such a daily soap opera?
Man, that's a good question. I think that it went off the rails a little bit when basically George Kliavkoff, he kind of messed up the strategy. And what I mean by that is, if the Pac-12 goes to market and signs the deal for $35 million or whatever that was rumored they had early on, they're not in this situation. But your mark goes to market almost right away, signs a deal very quickly, and takes away a large option for the Pac-12. Takes away Fox and other options, and all of a sudden, the Pac-12, it's going to be compared to the Big 12 in terms of inventory and how much money they can get and things like that. And times have changed. We're no longer in a time where ESPN and Apple and Amazon are going to overpay for a product. They're going to pay what they feel the value is. And I think the Pac-12 misread that. They thought they could get a certain amount of money even if they waited. And, maybe they will. I don't think they will. I'd be really surprised. But I think they misplayed the initial going to market and all that.
What was the confusion with Robert Robbins and his comments regarding the grant of rights? It seems like maybe he was misquoted in terms of saying that, they didn't have anything, and then it appears that they do have a grant of rights based on what others have said. Can you kind of unpack that, his comments a couple of weeks back on that, and was his quote, I guess, being portrayed as though he was talking about something else, or was he really in the dark on them having a grant of rights agreed to?
From what I understand, the agreement they have is very, very basic. It's basically like, if a good deal comes, this is the things that we're looking at. Like, there's still stuff to be negotiated, but it's basically the Pac-12 say, look, if we get this amount of money, would you guys agree to it? And are you open to maybe some revenue sharing and blah blah blah? And it's very basic. But the reality is, the rumors of the grant of rights have been around since the last Pac-12 meetings, but no one reported it because it's irrelevant, because there's no deal. And so these presidents could say what they want and agree to whatever they want in a room, but no one has signed anything. and there's no deal. And for all we know, let's say a deal is presented for $25 million. Well, the grant of rights that they maybe verbally agreed to had a certain revenue sharing. Well, all of a sudden, maybe in Arizona says, look, if it's only $25 million and we're getting 22 compared to other schools, we're not doing that. So from what I understand, the quote unquote grant of rights was more of, if it reaches a certain amount, then we could discuss and we'd be okay with a certain way of sharing. And, you get your success in football, the playoff money and all that. If you make the playoffs, you get more, things like that, as opposed to, it's very detailed and all that. I would be very surprised from what I heard if that grant of rights is completely done. And I think that's what Robbins was referring to, that, he didn't agree. He didn't sign a grant of rights. He didn't agree to everything in there. It may just be semantics, but I don't think a full grant of rights is done right now.
When any president and or athletic director of anybody that's a part of what is the current Pac-12 says that they want to wait until they get the deal, every one of them should get fired if they didn't, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they have to wait. And, even if it's a bad deal, they have to wait until a deal is presented. And that's why these schools aren't rushing. And I think, for instance, Colorado, I know the Smoak and all that, they're close to leaving. But even like Pete Samuel, who I like a lot, he said, they're not leaving before a deal is presented. Now, if a deal gets presented and it's bad, they can move pretty quickly. But until that happens, you can't leave. It's basically, you have to do your due diligence when you're in this job. And I can't see anyone leaving. The only way that a school would leave before a deal is if we're talking 2 months from now, football season's about to start and there still has been no deal presented and no deal in sight.
You know how social media is, there's all kinds of things flying left and right, and so it's hard to kind of sort through some of it sometimes. Sometimes you see things about deadlines, and that turns out that's just speculation. That's not hard fact or whatever. There's been some scuttlebutt about, hey, the end of this month, right? Just kind of lining up comments and the timing of things. We are 1 month exactly away from Pac-12 Media Days. It's hard to believe they wouldn't have something to present then, right, Jason? But do you feel like there's any sort of should we be watching here in 10 days at the end of the month, or do you think they've got, this whole entire month until media days and that's still, good room to try and get something done?
Yeah, I haven't heard of a strict deadline. I think the reason why the end of the month is coming up so much is the whole San Diego State deal and the amount they would have to pay and all that. But right. I mean, we're at the point where that's just not going to happen. I mean, they're not going to be able to announce. I'd be really surprised if they announced the deal, completed everything by the end of the month. And then, is it necessary to have a deal by Pac-12 Media Day next month? No. Would it be a PR nightmare if they did it? Yes. I mean, it would pretty much overshadow the entire Pac-12 Media Day. To me, I think they have to have a deal by that day. I think it gets real ugly in terms of PR and questions and pressure on the president if you're basically getting ready to start the football season and you don't know where your next deal is coming from. So I don't know if there's a strict deadline, but I think from a PR standpoint, in an ideal world, they have that deal done before Pac-12 Media Day.
What nightmare would it be? And I saw John Wilner in his mailbag, and I John, to me, even though at times there's been some stories that did not work out, I trust that he does his due diligence. That doesn't mean that at times whoever trusts that we do due diligence, you're going to have maybe something that doesn't quite work the way you were told. But it would be a nightmare, would it not, if they don't announce at Pac-12 Media Days? An absolute disaster?
Yeah, I mean, Wilner said the same thing, and I completely agree with him. It was just, you're taking the focus, the whole point of Pac-12 Media Day is to focus on the team, the players, the coaches. That's done. Everybody would be wondering about realignment. That would be every question. And George and every Pac-12 commish usually opens up the media day with a great speech, boasting about how great the Pac-12 is. You can't do that if there's no media deal. You can't talk about the future of the conference like they like to do. It would be an absolute PR nightmare if they don't have that deal done by media day.
Yeah, because I always thought that a media day, for example, last year, the Big 12 introduced Brett Yormark. And Bowlesby handed off the microphone, had a few things to say, and he walked into the night. And that it's, to me, and Dr. Livingstone of Baylor was there as well, to me, the media days in football are as much about the commissioner setting the tone of the state of the conference, and yes, focusing on the teams too.
Yeah, I mean, it's always been like that. It's always the first thing from Larry Scott. George did it when he was hired. You start off with the state of the conference. Where are we going? The Pac-12 usually announces some international stuff that they're doing. They go over the teams. They talk about television and all that. What are you going to do? I would almost say if there's no deal, I don't even know if George would make a speech because it would just be worse in that situation. And he didn't make one at the Pac-12, championship, the Pac-12 tournament for basketball. He didn't make himself available when in the past he has. And it's, it's tough to imagine him getting up in front of everyone and talking about the future of the conference and setting the table and, for the future of the conference when we don't even know if there is a future of the conference. So to me, and I'm sure they know this and they've talked about it. It is absolutely vital that they get something done within a month.
All right, Jason, you mentioned that 22-5. We've seen that. We know what the Big 12 with 31.6 or 7 or whatever. There's numbers that are thrown out there. Where do you feel like the 22-5, that number is coming from? Where is that from who you've been able to dig around with, or are people giving you that information?
Yeah, all I'll say is it comes from someone within Arizona that I trust quite a bit. I'll be honest, I don't have full details about where it's coming from, in terms of, the station and the network and all that. The number that they believe will be presented is 22.5. Now, that could include other ways other escalators to make that number increase. I don't know if it even includes the Comcast payments and all that, but I know that's the most consistent number. I've heard that from a few people. And, the biggest question to me is just where's it coming from? I every time I dig or I ask people, what network and all that, it's hard to get a clear answer. The only one that I've heard that isn't out is Apple. But the thing is, Apple in 100% streaming would go against what the presidents want because they don't want 100% streaming. I can't see a situation where they agree to that. So maybe the 22.5 is Apple and they're able to put other certain games on other networks and things like that. But right now, from what I've been told by a few people that I trust, the deal's just not there still. And maybe that changes suddenly. If it does, George deserves a lot of credit because he's absolutely moved in silence and done things very quietly and successfully. But right now, that doesn't seem to be the case.
All right, Jason, thank you so much. We appreciate your time. A month away from Pac-12 Media Days. We'll see exactly what happens between now and the end of the month, which is next Friday.